Hey, what's up? This is the latest episode of the Listen to My Opinion podcast, and I am your host, Lamo. And basically today, I am just going to brag on Charles Oliveira because I love that man very much. It's a pleasure to watch him fight, and he has worked so hard to reach championship level, and he accomplished that championship level when he knocked out Michael Chandler. Now, it looked scary, for sure. In the first round, he got really hurt, dropped to his knees. I think the fight was like a second or two from being stopped if he would not have leaned to his back to pull guard. And if he wouldn't have done that, if he would have stayed on his knees just a second or two longer, I think the fight would have been stopped. So he got tested in that way, which one of the biggest narratives I've been trying to combat for a very long time is that Charles Oliveira is no longer a quitter, quote-unquote quitter. He has been known to fold in the past, like I'd say 2016, 2017-ish, around that time. He still had some of those bad habits in him. But it's been clear for about 4 years now that he's worked on these things and he has gotten better at these things, and each fight shows just a little glimpse into that. Like, you might be able to catch him with a good shot and finish the fight, but that's the same thing as any fighter ever. But now he's not going to quit if things don't go his way. He's still going to stick to his game plan and push forward. And that's why he is so fun to watch, because of his striking style and pushing forward. He's one of the best pressure fighters in MMA right now. In my opinion, I think he's one of the best. He's got very accurate kicks. He knows how to cut the cage, and he knows when to herd people into strikes. He knows what to throw, and he's just very intelligent with his pressure. To me, he's like a very, very technical Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson in his prime put a tremendous pace and pressured people, but it was mostly in straight lines, whereas Oliveira seems to have an emphasis on cutting the cage and leading people into strikes, which if Tony Ferguson would have done that, I mean, that just been overpowered, considering he's a better athlete and way more durable. But every fighter has to have their shortcomings, and I guess that's Tony's. But yeah, anyway, Charles Oliveira, one of my favorite fighters to watch. But back to the quitter narrative, I am so happy that it happened that way. Now, I wouldn't have been as happy if Oliveira would have just snatched his neck off the first Michael Chandler takedown attempt, right? Like, if he would have just won in the first round, caught him, won quickly, I would obviously be very happy, but I wouldn't be as happy, because on the biggest stage, he finally got to prove what I and several other people have known for about 2 to 3 years now, that Oliveira is not the same fighter he was in his early to mid-20s. He has hit his prime. His mentality has changed, and he knows how to dig deep. And no one, well, I say no one, but that's not true. A lot of people didn't see that. A lot of people bought into what Michael Chandler was saying. A lot of people said that on Twitter, other social medias, and I just didn't understand it. Because if you watched any of his prior fights, from the Tamer to the Lee fight to the Ferguson fight, he's been fouled, he's been dropped, and he continues to put forward that pressure game plan. He never backs down from it. And for people to think that he would quit against Michael Chandler is just it was so absurd to me. It was like people were willingly being delusional, willingly ignoring evidence of Charles Oliveira going through adversity and pushing through it, and just ignoring it because they want that same narrative to be true. They need this fighter to have some inherent weakness, and Oliveira does have weaknesses, but I just don't understand why people were so eager to run with this narrative when it had been proven false for at least 2 years now. And I'm so glad Oliveira was able to show it once again that he had fixed these things on the biggest stage that you can. Next thing I want to talk about is how scary Shane Burgos and Edson Barboza was. I'm not sure why the universe is lined up in a way to where Edson Barboza gets fed super durable opponents who can somehow withstand the thrashing that Edson Barboza can give them. He did the same thing to Dan Hooker, and that fight's just like I watched the Dan Hooker and Edson Barboza fight a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, there's no way that I'm going to see Edson Barboza brutalize someone like this again, because, you know, it's just, he beat the dog shit out of him in a very, very rough way. And then Shane Burgos is just another durable, really, really good fighter. One thing I was noticing is that Shane Burgos has the ultimate fight mentality whenever he is in there. If you go back and watch, whenever he takes more damage, it's like that his first instinct is to ramp up the pressure. And that often leads to him getting more damage, but that can break a lot of guys. And that's a really unique trait that I don't think a lot of people have. Like, watch him and Edson fight again, and when Edson lands like a 3 to 4 strike combo, watch what Burgos does. He starts pressuring because he knows that he's taking damage. He knows that, hey, I'm getting hit with a lot of strikes. If I back up, I'm going to give him the initiative, so I need to get in his face. And that's a mentality that I really, really respect. And it's really hard to watch someone like Shane with that kind of mentality take that much damage and then have such a delayed KO. Like, whenever he started wobbling and falling back to the cage, he hit the cage so fucking hard. Like, he fell so hard that it's like something came loose, right? Like, I was so scared for this guy. I went outside and I was like, what do we... That fight had so many different layers of violence. Like, the first couple of rounds were just like gore cans were fucking... like split open shins and fucking bloody everything, and it's just like, damn, this sport's really brutal. And then that happens where he gets a concussion and, you know, doesn't go down till like 5 seconds later. Like, there were so many different layers of violence that, like, it would be a tough sell for someone that's not used to this sport to be like, oh yeah, that's cool. Like, it was so brutal, but to us combat sports fans, it was really cool. I'm just saying that kind of brutality is a tough sell for the average person. And something needs to be said about Edson Barboza's technical improvements. Since dropping down to 145, it seems like he's getting more defensively aware. Instead of trapping himself along the fence, he's hitting slick pivots. His shot selection when he counters people, he's mixing in uppercuts, he's mixing in overhands, depending on what attacks the opponent throws at him. If Shane Burgos throws out a lazy jab, he can punish him by cross-countering. And it's just, all of these counters are coming out, and they're perfectly placed, they're perfectly timed, and most importantly, the footwork issue, which Edson's been easily pressured, and he just kind of circles along the fence rather than hitting tight pivots to regain the center of the cage. And it looks like he's doing that more often now. And he's 35. Being 35 in a lower weight class is like being 47 in a higher weight class. Barboza truly is a special athlete to basically look the same as he did in his early to late 20s now that he's 35 and at a lower weight class. And I just have a lot of respect for the guy. I think that he's finally hitting his stride on a technical level, because the athleticism's always been there. It's just the technical shortcomings that doesn't let him put it all together. And he's being a lot smarter and a lot more defensively responsible with his footwork. And it's really cool. Like, it's really cool to watch him fight now. And it's always been really cool to watch him fight, but it's just, I marvel at it now versus when I used to be just indifferent about it. And moving on quickly, something minor. It's really disappointing that Chikagian was able to beat Araujo, because, you know, Araujo looked like a good prospect. She looked like a good prospect, and she still is a good prospect, but, man, you can't be losing to cardio kickboxers like Kaylin Chikagian. You can't. You can't be losing to them. And it's just a setback, and it's a worrying setback, to be honest, because there is an argument that she won that fight, but also it's like, you know, there are moments where she didn't look dominant. And it's just like, I don't know. I was just disappointed, truly. But that's okay. Next, I'll talk about Schnell and Bontorin. Thought Bontorin clearly won that. The way he's able to land power shots consistently should have won him almost every round. It's very disappointing, though, because I wanted Schnell to win. And I think that he has a technical game that would service him if he were in a worse weight division. Like, if he were in a less competitive weight division, then I think that he would be able to continue winning, because he's a slick grappler and a slick striker. Now, he has issues defensively, and he can kind of lose focus sometimes. But whenever he's on, he looks really good. But he was clearly a step behind his opponent, and it's okay. Schnell's on a 5-2 run. Hopefully he can keep adding to the skill set. I'm not sure if he will, but hopefully he does. And then, finally, we got to talk about the sadness that is the decline of Tony Ferguson. So I've heard good theories that the decline of Tony Ferguson actually started at the Kevin Lee fight and the knee injury. And that does make a lot of sense. But I think now it's at a point to where Tony Ferguson's athleticism has completely failed him. He's Father Thomas claimed him, and his style that was so reliant on physicality is harder to enforce when he doesn't have that kind of athleticism. And you could tell when he's on the ground, he's not nearly as active, and he just can't get up. It's always sad when a legend starts to slow down and you start to see the results in the cage. It is sad, and I do feel bad for Tony Ferguson. I've taken up for him a lot over the years, but I think the reason that Tony is losing so badly is not because he's fallen off that hard. I do think that he's fallen off pretty hard, but I think most of it is just technical shortcomings that have always been there. And I don't think that I don't think Justin Gaethje broke him with because he stopped him with strikes. He showed, the fundamental flaws in Tony's striking game. And then now you have Charles Oliveira and Beneil Dariush, who both top gamed him with relative ease and won 30-27, no question about it. And it's just like those are different holes. So how does Justin Gaethje, beating the shit out of Tony Ferguson with strikes, cause him to get top gamed? It doesn't line up. I don't think Justin Gaethje broke him. I think that these technical shortcomings have always been there, and they've just been waiting to be exploited with the right opponent. So enough sadness, and how about we get to some happiness, which would be discussing Charles Oliveira's future in lightweight. Now, he's the champion, and I think that it's only right that the winner of Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor get the title shot. Conor doesn't deserve it, but if he beats Poirier, I guess he deserves it. I feel weird about it because it's like Conor doesn't really do much in the division, but he got knocked out. The most current version of him got submitted by Khabib, no fault there, and then got knocked out by Dustin Poirier in the second round. Dan Hooker went to decision with Dustin Poirier, and Conor got knocked out in the second round. It's I don't feel like he's put in enough work to get a title shot, but Dustin Poirier is, in my opinion, top 3 fighter in the division. So if Conor could beat him, then I guess he deserves a shot, whatever. And then, so the winner of that could fight Oliveira. In my opinion I think that Conor will be the easiest fight for him. Poirier is the hardest fight for him. And then Justin Gaethje is a coin flip fight for him. I don't know who the hell will win that, but I know that it'll be pure violence and a lot of fun. Some quick reasoning behind why I feel that way. I think Conor has a chance to knock him out early. Of course. That's just the Conor thing, right? Conor can do big damage early. But I don't think that he'll find that shot, and I think he'll be body locked and taken down. And I see Oliveira just getting a submission on Conor sooner than later. I think that he has the type of top control to where he would set Conor into a trap, and I do not think that Conor would get out of that trap. The reason I think Justin Gaethje and him is a coin flip fight is because I think that Gaethje can maintain a pace over 5 rounds of consistently catching Charles with counters, and just sometimes not really catching him with counters, but just catching him with, strikes on the lead. And I just see Oliveira getting cracked repeatedly if it's a stand-up bout. But the big thing about my coin flip prediction with that fight, Justin Gaethje, is that I do not think that Justin Gaethje can survive the reactive takedowns of Oliveira. So I have a chance to, him just get blown out of the water. And another thing about Oliveira is that he hits deceptively hard because of his placement. And I can totally see him putting Justin Gaethje on noodle legs with a perfectly, whether it's a hook or an uppercut, right on the jaw, perfectly placed. And Justin Gaethje, does the chicken dance. I can totally envision that. Charles is super accurate in exchanges. The problem is that he's a little easily hit sometimes. So I think that's a coin flip fight because I think that they would crash in the middle, and I do not know who would win. Similar to Michael Chandler, except Justin Gaethje would be a harder fight over 5 rounds. So, but the person I think gives him the most issues is Dustin Poirier. Simply because I think Dustin Poirier has better technique than Charles Oliveira on the feet, both defensively and close offensively. And due to that, he can fight on the back foot, he can fight on the front foot. It does not matter. He can do whatever he needs to do in the fight, and he can adapt. His takedown defense is okay. I would put it on a similar level to most other elite lightweights. But I think that he has the jiu-jitsu to survive and not get submitted. Whereas if Justin Gaethje or Conor McGregor got taken down with the reactive shot, I just see Oliveira being able to submit them. So due to Dustin's defensive prowess and just overall MMA game, I feel like he gives Oliveira the most problems. So I would probably favor that fight like 60-40 Dustin. The Gaethje fight would be like 50-50, and the Conor fight would be like 60-40 Oliveira. So yeah, the cool thing is that Oliveira has a chance here to make a super all-time great legacy. Like really, like I know we talk about, the GOATs and the greats and stuff, but if Oliveira can beat Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor, if he can beat these elite guys and defend his title a couple of times, I mean, that makes his secondary accolades like the most submissions, most finishes in UFC history. That makes all of that stand out even more. I mean, if you're talking about a guy who had like 3 or 4 defenses against elite competition, and then you look at that they have the most finishes, the most submissions, you're looking at a legitimate all-time great legacy. And that is so cool. It's like all of it is coming together for Oliveira at the right time, and I'm just so happy for him. And I am pretty much done ranting about the event. It was amazing. I've watched that fight like 10 times, and I'm going to do a breakdown soon of it. But as of now, I've just been enjoying it, rewatching it. Like, I legitimately watched the fight 4 times today. Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler, I watched it 4 times today. It was just fun. It's just fun. It's back and forth. It's crazy every time you watch it. And I thank those two gentlemen for putting their bodies on the line because, I mean, it's just amazing. It's an amazing fight. They matched up so well together. Okay, so now that is over, we are moving to my favorite part of the podcast every week, and it is the Discord questions. We're going to start where we left off. And the first question says, does Dustin Poirier turn into a big draw after beating Conor? He's already knocked out Conor. I mean, whatever he is now, I don't figure it's going to get much bigger if he knocks out Conor again. But I'm sure finishing Conor twice won't like hurt his popularity. But I don't think it'll get much bigger. He's already a pretty decently big star. Like, he's a known MMA fighter. He's not Conor McGregor famous, but he's known. How did you get so deeply involved with MMA? And what part of the sport do you think people should be focusing on that might be overlooked? I got deeply involved with MMA because I just love the sport. I have watched since 2012, and I didn't step into a gym until 2014, like early 2015. And from there, it just became like I got more obsessed with it. When I first went to the gym, I wasn't as obsessed with it. I just wanted to get a good workout in and like learn, the cool stuff that I watched on the UFC events. And but like around 2017, I just started really caring about the analytical side of it and like what they're actually doing. Getting a firm understanding of the techniques and tactics that go behind combat. And like once I started like figuring out, hey, there's actually a lot of nuances to this stuff, I just became fascinated with it. There's a physicality part of it that fascinates me, and then the technical side of it that fascinates me. It all comes together, and I think it's the greatest sport in the world. As of now, I'm going to create my own sport one day that's going to be like Lethway with grappling, and that will be the greatest sport in the world. Until then, MMA's number one, and I don't think there's really a close second. Next question says, people talk about Islam as the next Khabib and the future lightweight champ. What do you think his future is? Are people jumping the gun? Yes, I do think that people are jumping the gun. Now, from what we know from Islam's training footage, he seems to be the real deal. Everyone praises him. Everyone talks about how strong he is, how technical he is. So, I mean, he is being hyped as the next Khabib, and who knows, maybe he is. But I think there's this thing about like Russian dudes that look scary, and like that we start fearing them, like Khamzat and him. Like everyone's scared of him, and he's beaten no one ever. And same thing with Makhachev. Really, I mean, he's beaten actually like tough prospects that are ranked, but he's never fought a high level fighter. We don't know what it's gonna look like, and he could very easily get a high level opponent, dominate them, and then we're like, oh shit, we have another Khabib in our hands. But until I see that, how am I supposed to like really just be like, yeah, he's exactly like Khabib, when no one has ever been like Khabib? No one. Like, I can't just say that he's like him until I see him fight elite competition. And I think that's fair to say. So yes, I'll say people are jumping the gun. I don't think that he's going to be the next Khabib. Next question says, do you think that the lead elbow is underutilized in MMA? If so, what can fighters do to make the move more viable, in your opinion? The lead elbow to me has always been more of an intercepting tool than anything else. The best lead elbows seem to be when you catch your opponent entering pocket range. And I do think that they're underutilized because I don't see a lot of them. But whenever you do see them, they are very, very effective. Whether you're causing a concussion to end the fight or you're just causing a cut, lead elbows are something that can really change the fight, and they're a good counter, a good intercepting tool. Obviously, I don't have any numbers. I don't know if they're underutilized. Maybe they're not, but you don't see good lead elbows a lot. Next question is, best era of MMA to you? I got to say it's probably the current one. Now, I like nostalgia bias. I think we all do. It was amazing whenever I saw, Anderson Silva beat Chael Sonnen in the rematch. I was really excited about that. But the best era of MMA to me has to be the current one, because I feel like everyone's getting, at least in the lower weight classes, everyone's getting a baseline of skill that if you don't have that baseline of skill, then you're not going to be ranked, and you're just going to be beaten to death in the unranked part of the division. So I would say current era of MMA is my favorite at the moment. Next question is, if Izzy and John ever happens, how do you think John will try to set up his takedowns? That's a great question, actually. Now, I don't know what they're going to tell him, but I assume that they would go with reactive takedowns. That's what I would be telling John, is, John, we need to catch kicks and get reactive takedowns either off of those or just reactive takedowns in general. Like if Izzy commits to any punches, be able to duck into a body lock or duck into a double leg. In this case, I would go with the double leg and single legs. From what we've seen, Izzy does pretty well when someone tries to manhandle a body lock on him. He has a lot of training there, and he's able to negate that. We saw Blachowicz try to body lock him in the early goings, and he couldn't have any success with it. So if I am in John's corner, I'm saying reactive takedowns only. Do not shoot without any setup, because he probably can stuff that. Reactive takedowns only, and catch kicks. Those are the two things. Next question is, how would you see Volkanovski versus haired Aldo going? I assume you mean like in Prime Aldo, where he had hair. Prime Aldo and Volkanovski would be very, very, very close. Aldo would cause tremendous damage, I feel like, and force Volkanovski to adapt. And Volkanovski is one of the most adaptable fighters in MMA history, honestly, if we're going to go there. He's one of the most adaptable I've seen. Just his fights with Max Holloway and Chad Mendes show that he can adapt whatever style you need him to do. He seems to be one of the more coachable fighters ever. And I think that because of that adaptability, that I'm never going to be like, okay, yeah, Aldo just smashes him. But I do think that a Prime Aldo is going to do a lot of damage and force him into a war. And who wins that war, I am not sure. So that's about as 50-50 as I think he can get. And that's a great question. But I'm sorry, there's no concrete answer. Next question is, could current Poirier beat Prime Aldo at featherweight? A lot of Aldo matchups here. Could current Poirier? Yes, absolutely. Beating Prime, well, at featherweight, never mind. No, I don't think that current Poirier can get to featherweight anymore. He's a thick boy now, and I think that getting to featherweight would compromise him, and a Prime Aldo would probably do a lot of damage. But if they fought at lightweight, I do think that Poirier could beat Prime Aldo. Next question is, what are the fights to make for each division at the time you're recording this podcast? See, that's a question that doesn't age terribly, because that question was posted on March 15th, and obviously it is May. So, at the time we're recording this in May, I'm going to say that the fight to make in each division before any other fight ever is the rematch between Peter Yan and Aljamain Sterling. Make that fight. Do not compromise on making that fight. Just make it, because it needs to happen. And Sterling does not need his reputation ruined by ducking Peter Yan. He needs to fight him again and see if you can find a way to win. Because, look, if he can find a way to choke him out, then that's good, because, it's going to piss a lot of people off, and he'll at least be the legitimate champion. But right now, he's the paper champion. Outside of that, I think the next biggest fight to make is Dustin Poirier and Charles Oliveira, because Oliveira is the champion now, and I think Dustin is the second best lightweight in the world, with Gaethje a close third. All right, next question is, including Wonderboy, how would you book the welterweight top 5? Oh, that's easy. Okay, Leon Edwards with Colby Covington for the number 1 contender. Wonderboy is facing Gilbert, and the winner, if Wonderboy wins that, then he gets a title shot after the winner of Leon and Colby. Next question is, how well do you think Volkanovski would do at lightweight against the top 5? That's a very, very good question. I praise Volkanovski for how good of a fighter he is, and he would definitely have to adapt to bigger opponents. But I'm not confident in him yet that he could dominate lightweight top 5. But I do think that Volkanovski could beat some in the top 5. So right now I would say about average. Like, he would lose a couple times, maybe get a couple wins. Who wins in a rematch against Luque versus Leon? That's a really, really good question. I think at this point, I'm going to go with Luque, and that's no disrespect to Leon Edwards. He might come out, take a dump on Nate Diaz and remind us of how good he is, but I haven't seen him in so long, and I think that Luque is, a equally competent fighter, and I think that he would win. How successful will Rockhold be during his comeback? Well, see, you're talking to someone that started training MMA because of Luke Rockhold. He's one of my favorite fighters ever, and I don't want to see him come back. I don't want to see him knock. Like, if you listen to this and you're a Luke Rockhold fan like I am, like me and you, we've seen him get destroyed too many times. Let's just be real about it. We've sat on the couch and watched him get his shit rocked too many times. I don't want to see it anymore. Each time it hurts, and like I'm a little numb to it now, but it's just like it sucks every time regardless. Like, I don't want to see that. Okay? Like, he's one of my favorite fighters. I don't want to see him get his jaw blown off. So I don't want him to come back, because I think that could happen. Like, he could fight someone like Uriah Hall, who he would take a dump on in his prime, but now he could just get fucking caught with a good straight punch. Uriah Hall's capable of landing a good straight punch on Luke Rockhold, and if you hit him on, I don't want to see anything like that happen. And it would be really great if Rockhold could come back and win, but I just don't know if he, durability and athleticism wise, if he's still got it. I don't know. So my prediction for Rockhold coming back is he would probably do below average. I don't think he would suck outright, but he's gonna probably lose to people you think he would have beaten in his prime, and probably just beat people in the lower part of the middleweight division. Next matchup for Wonderboy, well, it's Gilbert Burns, and if he wins that, Kamaru Usman, please, 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 please. The next question is the exact odds for me: 135-pound, 5'10" white man to defeat Francis with the round 1 KO. All right, that has got to be below 1%. It's got to be way below 1%. Like, I don't want to say anything's impossible, but it has to be like, if 1% is you fought him 100 times, you would land one shot one time, then no, it'd have to be way below 1%. So I'm going to say like 0.0001%. And if like that's not acceptable, then impossible. I don't know if you could do it. I don't think any of us could, though. Next question is Sean O'Malley ready for Dominic Cruz? I mean, yeah, I think so. Dominic Cruz is a legend. He's been fighting for a while, but his style has seemed to be figured out. A lot of his footwork is smoke and mirrors, essentially. It's disguising either wrestling shots, but it's never really putting him in good position to attack. So you can kick his legs out from under him and time him with power shots. And that was something that people weren't capable of whenever he was as dominant as he was. And like Demetrius Johnson, working full-time at a factory, fought him for the belt, and he lost. But if you watch the striking, he had him figured out. Like, Demetrius was tagging him and forced Cruz to wrestle. So, yeah, Sean O'Malley has a more unique and, in my opinion, even though it's unique and it might not be like the most fundamentally based, it's very, very effective. It reminds me of like Conor McGregor. He just seems to have a innate ability with timing and distance control. So yeah, I think that he could absolutely beat Dominic Cruz. I don't think that would be much of an issue. Next question is, do you think McGregor retires again, and if he loses the trilogy with Dustin Poirier? That's a great question. Losing the trilogy to Dustin Poirier wouldn't be the most embarrassing thing in the world, so he probably shouldn't retire. But I could see that being the stamp. But I will say, if I had to put money on it, if Conor loses to Dustin Poirier, he won't retire. He'll fight again somehow. Next question is Usman pound for pound number 1 right now for you? Yes, absolutely. He is the one that is being the most impressive with his performances, running through people in ways that you do not expect him to run through people. He is the pound for pound number 1 as of 2021. Next question is, who do you think is the best MMA coach of all time? Damn. I mean, you got to give a shout out to Jackson Wink, because even though they suck now, at one point they were on top of the world in terms of strategy and fighters coming and getting talent. They were a very prominent gym. So if all eras are considered equal right here, then definitely Jackson Wink. And then past that, it has to be Trevor Whitman and the people in Elevation in Colorado. Like, they have to be. I want to say City Kickboxing, but I feel like they're sort of on a downscope here. If they can pick it back up and be relevant for, maybe 3 or 4 more years, they'll definitely be in the top 3 for me. But right now I'm going to say Trevor Whitman's team in Elevation and Jackson Wink. And that's of all time. Like, Trevor Whitman's, don't get it twisted. Trevor Whitman now is a million times better than Jackson Wink right now. But I'm just considering all eras. Next question is, do you do anything MMA related for a living? And if not, do you want to in the future? No, I do not do anything MMA related for a living. Unless you count the revenue I get for my YouTube videos, then yes, if that like covering MMA gets me a little extra income, because you guys are awesome and support me by watching my videos and stuff. So that, I guess that kind of counts, since I'm getting a little extra income. Not a whole lot, but a little. And if not, do I want to in the future? Yes. The goal is not to compete professionally, because I don't know if I'm a good enough athlete to get where I want to go. Like, I think I'm a decent athlete, but I don't know if I could. I don't know. Like, I just don't know about competing. But what I really want to do is coach fighters. That's what I want to do. That's what I hope I can do one day. And the only way to do that is to, get the local talent here and coach them up and see if we can make it somewhere. Because that's my favorite thing to do. My favorite thing to do is to watch film and break down each technique that the person's using and see how we can make a game plan around that. I love doing that. I've done that many times before. I've been successful more often than not. And doing this whole analysis thing on YouTube is just so much fun. And I feel like it would be a dream come true if I ever got into at least a semi-popular coaching position. Like, if my fighters are just fighting regionally successfully, like, that's a dream come true. That's something I want to do one day. Next question is, what will it take for UFC fighters to generally get better pay? Well, the first answer is time. And the reason the answer is time is because there are rich assholes who don't want to cut into their profit, even though they can still get their yachts and do everything that me and you can't do. They still want to have as much money for themselves as possible. It's human nature, I would say, because humans are shitty, and the fighters get robbed because of it. But in terms of UFC fighters getting more leverage, there has to be some sort of Ali Act for them. I don't know if they would use the Ali Act, but something similar to it that forces them to get what they're worth. Because someone like Rose Namajunas making $500,000 is unacceptable. I mean, she generates much more than that. She should at least be making $3 million. Like, that's how much she gives to the company. That's how popular she is. And she doesn't even touch that. So there has to be something that will force the hand of the UFC. There has to be. Because they're not going to do it on their own. Next question is, where does Usman rank right now as one of the best pound for pound? Number 1. And the final question of the podcast is, what does Whittaker have to do to beat Izzy in a possible rematch if you think that he can even beat him somehow? One, I think that he can definitely beat him. Yan beating Izzy showed a lot of ways that you can beat him, and it's stuff that I've said all along. I've said this on Twitter for a long time. The 2 keys to beating Israel Adesanya are jabbing on the feet and transitional work. That's what you have to do. Go for reactive takedowns any way you can and jab him when you're on the feet. When you're forced in that space, stay tight, don't open up, and jab. That's it. Because Izzy has minimal counters to a jab. He can deal with the jab. He can deal with the jab. I mean, he finished Costa because he slipped his jab and then he countered him. It's not like you're not in danger, but that's just what you're always in danger when you're facing a striker of that caliber. But jabbing is the thing that has the most success on him, and Robert Whittaker has a phenomenal jab. So if he bases his game plan around using that, the primary tool for beating Israel Adesanya. I think that if he game plans around that, timing it, beating him to the punch with the jab, then he's going to have massive success. And the only thing that worries me with Robert is that he loves the body lock, and I think that going for single and double legs on Israel Adesanya proves to be more successful. So Robert needs to mix in reactive takedowns that way. And if you don't get the takedowns, say Robert gets a reactive single leg shot and doesn't have the angle, can't get him down, abandon it and go for transitional work. Punch off the break, score points, keep active. And I think that if he does that, he can definitely win. All right, guys. So I think I've answered enough. We're going to have more questions on the next podcast. I appreciate you regular listeners. I love all of you so much. Thank you for listening, and I hope you were somewhat entertained. Until next time, guys.